Hi, I'm reading you chapter 3 of Daisy Dawson today, and it's called Ant Music. The next morning, Daisy woke up feeling sure that Boom would be back in his usual place. He'd probably just gone out for a walk. She decided to make him a treat and was just putting an extra thick ham and ketchup sandwich into her lunchbox when her dad came past on his way out to work. "You must have hollow legs, Daisy," he said, taking a quick swig of coffee and ruffling her hair. "You've got enough in there to feed an army." "She's a growing girl," said Mum. "Aren't you, love?" "Hope so," said Daisy, who was still one of the smallest in her class. "Now then," said Dad, kissing her on the top of her head. "Did I ever tell you that the best things come in small packages?" Walking along the path next to the meadow, Daisy stopped and leant over the gate. "Boom," she called softly. "I've made your favourite sandwich." But there was still no sign of him. And as Daisy listened, the only sound was the wind whispering softly past the stones and the grass and the broken window. Miss Frink was amazed to see Daisy arrive on time for once, that she gave her a yellow smiley sticker and sent her up to the office with the register. The secretary was busy, so Daisy sat on a chair in a corridor and thought about all the unusual things that had been happening. And the more she thought about them, the more ridiculous they seemed. A talking dog called Boom, gerbils discussing cheesy snacks. Swinging her feet above the polished wooden floor, Daisy watched specks of dust dancing in a shaft of sunlight and decided that it was probably time to stop daydreaming and join the real world. Wasn't that what people were always telling her? Maybe the sooner she forgot about the whole thing, the better. But even if Boom couldn't talk, she was still worried about him. Where had he gone? Daisy's thoughts were interrupted by a tiny sound, like someone singing a long way off. Da-ba-dee-dum-dum, da-da-ba-dee-dum-dum, da-ba-dee-dum-dum. She frowned. What was that noise? Da-ba-dee-dum-dum, da-da-ba-dee-dum-dum, da-ba-dee-dum-dum, da-da-ba-dee-dum-dum. Daisy jumped off her seat, got down on her hands and knees and peered beneath the chair. At first, all she could see was an old pen and a ball of fluff. But as she looked more closely, she saw a tiny ant sitting in the dust, moving his head back and forth to the rhythm of the song. So I wasn't imagining things, Daisy thought. Da-ba-dee-dum-dum, da-da-ba-dee-dum-dum, da-ba-dee-dum-dum, da-da-ba-dee-dum-dum. "Hello there, little ant," she said. "That's a nice song you're singing." "Ah!" The ant jumped into the air and slowly backed away towards the skirting board. "Don't be hurting me," he said. "Don't be stepping on me with those big shoesies." Daisy leant closer. "I'm not going to hurt you," she replied. "I was just enjoying your song." The ant stopped. "Really?" he asked. "Is you liking me singing?" Daisy smiled. "Yes, I is," she said. "I is making it up myself," said the ant proudly. "Guess what it be called?" "I don't know," replied Daisy. "Dubbity-dum-dum?" The ant was quiet for a moment. "Lucky guess," he said at last. Daisy sat back on her heels, stuck out her bottom lip and blew so that her fringe puffed in the air. Today was turning out to be just as strange as yesterday. "I's supposed to be down in the big room where they is dropping their biscuits," the ant explained. "Biscuits and sugar." "The staff room, you mean?" asked Daisy. "Yes," said the ant. "There was 20 of us in the patrol, see? I was singing and a-dancing and enjoying myself, and then the corporal says, 'Oi, Shorty, shut up!' So then I sits down and I starts to cry, and when I looks up again, they's all gone." "Poor you," said Daisy sympathetically. "Yes," replied the ant. "Poor me is right, I reckon." "Why was the corporal cross with you?" "He says ants who keep singing get squashed by the big shoesies. So now I'm doing all my singing under the chair, see?" "I do see," said Daisy, trying not to laugh. Out of the way of the big shoeses, I suppose. Exactly, said the ant. If you is squished by the big shoesies, you can't sing no more, and that is bad and not happy. And, he added, I likes being happy. Me too, agreed Daisy. You don't look happy, missus, said the ant. Is you scared of the big shoesies too? No, said Daisy. Big shoesies don't really bother me. It's just, she took a deep breath. Yesterday I was talking to a dog, then I chatted to some gerbils, and now I'm talking to an ant. And I don't mean to be rude, but it's all a bit weird. So now I'm beginning to wonder if I might be dreaming. Oh no, said the ant. If you was dreaming, you'd be snorking. Snorking? Daisy said. What's that? You know, said the ant. He lay down on his side, put 2 legs under his head and made little puffing noises. Snorking. Oh, snoring, said Daisy. Well, yes, I suppose I would. The ant scampered closer and looked up at her. Guess what, missus? What? I is not happy either. Oh dear, whispered Daisy. Why not? I told you, wailed the ant. I is lost. Lost? Said Daisy. Yes, said the ant. Completely and utterly. Well, perhaps I can help, offered Daisy. I know where the staff room is. The ant shook his head. No, I don't want biscuits no more. I is tired. I is wanting to go home. Oh, said Daisy. Well, which way is your nest? If I was a knowing that, replied the ant, me wouldn't be lost, would me? I suppose not, agreed Daisy. But how did you get here in the first place? Marched, said the ant. That's how ants is getting everywhere. Marchy, 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 under the greenwood slab and over the brown shoesy field. Daisy thought for a moment. Oh, you mean the front entrance, she said, remembering the green double doors at the end of the corridor. She guessed that the shoesy field was probably the doormat where people wiped their feet. I can take you there if you like. Climb up and I'll give you a ride. Daisy stretched out her arm beneath the chair so that her hand was almost touching the ant's. He took a few steps back and then slowly began to walk forwards again. Don't be squishing me now, he said. Stop worrying, said Daisy. I won't hurt you. The ant touched the side of Daisy's finger with his tiny feelers and tickled his way along the middle of her palm. Ready? He said. Off we goes. OK, said Daisy. Hold on tight. She was about to pull her hand from beneath the chair when she heard footsteps and looked up to see Mr. Blake, the head teacher, standing behind her. Ah, Daisy Dawson, he said. What are you up to? Quick as a flash, Daisy folded her fingers over the top of the ant and jumped to her feet. Sorry, Mr. Blake, she said. I've just come to deliver the register. Hey, called a little voice. What be going on? Shh, said Daisy. I beg your pardon, said Mr. Blake. Sorry, said Daisy. I didn't mean you. Mr. Blake glanced around. Then who did you mean exactly? Who be there? No one, said Daisy. Young lady, said Mr. Blake. Do you make a habit of saying shush to no one? Be it your corporal boss man? Yes, said Daisy. Kind of. She glanced up and saw that Mr. Blake was looking annoyed. I mean, no, she added hurriedly. No, I don't make a habit of saying shush to no one. She wiped her forehead with the back of her hand. This was getting a bit complicated. Well then, said Mr. Blake, taking off his spectacles and polishing them with a cloth. Perhaps you would like to explain. Daisy, can I go back to me nest now, please? I want to go a-sleeping and a-snorking, Daisy, Daisy. Would you please shut up for a minute, said Daisy crossly. Then she looked up at Mr. Blake and blushed as she realised what she had just said. Mr. Blake glared at her so fiercely that her knees went wobbly. What did you say? He demanded. Oh, no, I didn't mean you, Mr. Blake. I was, Daisy thought desperately for a moment and was hit by a sudden flash of inspiration. I was talking to my stomach. When he heard this, Mr. Blake passed a hand over his eyes and shook his head. Your stomach, he repeated. Yes, Mr. Blake, I don't think I had enough breakfast. It's been quite a morning. You is telling me, missus. Daisy tried to ignore the fact that the ant was now doing a very energetic and tickly jig around the palm of her hand. Instead, she did her best to look serious. Mr. Blake sighed. Daisy, I really don't know what's got into you today, but I suggest that whatever it is, you let it out again as soon as possible. Yes, Mr. Blake, said Daisy, trying hard not to giggle as the ant continued to boogie around inside her hand. I shall certainly let it out as soon as I can. Mr. Blake took off his glasses again and waved her away with the back of his hand. Go on then, child. Back to your classroom. See ya, Blakey boy, called the ant. Careful with them shoesies. You nearly got me in big trouble back there, said Daisy, as she nipped out through the double doors into the playground. Nothing to do with me, said the ant. I was just dancing. Said Daisy, and interrupting. Yes, said the ant, dancing and interrupting. I's good at them things, ain't I, missus? Tell me something, said Daisy. Don't you think it's strange that we're talking to one another? No, said the ant. I is talking to anyone that be listening. Last week me talked to a caterpillar. That was strange. Why? Asked Daisy. Well, we was looking at the birds in the sky and he says, I'll be up there flying with them one day. So I says, yeah, right, only if they eat you first. Actually, he was telling the truth, said Daisy. Didn't you know he'll turn into a butterfly next spring? The ant laughed. Me likes you, he said. You is funny. They reached the edge of the playing field and Daisy knelt down on the soft grass. There, she said. Do you think you can find your way home now? Oh, me house, cried the ant, happily as Daisy opened her hand. Are you seeing me house? He walked to the end of Daisy's finger and stepped down onto the blade of grass. Then he turned round and waved his feelers at her. Thanks for the lift, Mrs. Daisy. Be seeing you again soon some day. I hope so, said Daisy. She watched him crawl down the green stem to the brown earth below. But how will I know it's you? Easy, replied the ant. I is the one who be singing. At that moment, a window opened and Daisy heard the familiar sound of Miss Frink's voice shouting at her from across the playground. Daisy Dawson, she yelled. Come back into the classroom this instant. Uh-oh, said Daisy. Got to go. But when she looked around, the ant had gone. Daisy sat silently for a moment, breathing the scent of the warm earth and listening to the murmur of the bees. Goodbye, she whispered. Watch out for them shoesies. Then she jumped up and ran across the playground, hopping carefully over a small line of ants before disappearing through the double doors into the cool shadows of the corridor. And that's the end of that chapter. Tomorrow I will be reading chapter 4, and it's all about the disappearance of Boom. So you'll be finding out a bit more about that tomorrow. Poor Boom, I wonder what's happened to him. And then next week's work in your English is going to be talking about Boom, thinking about what's happened to him, describing him, and having a go at writing your own Daisy Dawson story. So that will be lots of fun. So make sure you tune in tomorrow for the next chapter.